I think it can give you a lot of very useful insights about what are your real priorities and what is it that you really care for. Um, and not to sound as much doomy and gloomy, I had asked you a question with a very optimistic view, and I hope it's more true than not. I asked you a question. I hope you can read the top line. I'll read it out for you. I had asked some of you through a survey the same question, which is, fast forward your life to when you're 80 years old, and think about what single word you would use to describe your life thus far. And about 73 of you had responded. And I just put the same words. I did not change the words. The major themes seem to be like contentment or achievement seeking, like more than half of you saying, I want a satisfied life, I want a happy life, I want a beautiful life. And about 15% say adventure seeking, like crazy, adventurous, journey, roller coaster. And then some of you say, I want a altruistic life. It's a smaller percentage. And there are the others category also. One of you had said, apology, my mistake. I can help you with that. So you can see that at least the majority of us are seeking like contentment, satisfaction, happiness. It seems like Dalai Lama also seems to agree. So this is like a quote like from the internet, of course, like from Google, I don't know which source. But he says, the purpose of our lives is to be happy. So it's like, okay, this seems like a good theme. Maybe it's a good purpose to have. If I'm unable to find a better purpose, it's probably a good purpose to hold as my main purpose and try and explore that a little bit further and make it happen. And so I decided to dig a little bit more deeper. And this book, once again, is one of my top books. This guy, Bertrand Russell, is a famous mathematician. He is the author of Principia Mathematica, one of the co-authors. He's a staunch logician, if I can use that word. He does not believe in starting off with like a ethics perspective or moral perspective. He just says, pure rational logic, let's try and maximize happiness. Not just conquer it, but also like maximize it. So I think it's a very interesting logical starting point. And he has no other constraints except for that. And he tries to come up with logical arguments to try and see how we can maximize our happiness. And you can see there other people also have tried something very similar, including Maslow and a bunch of other people. You should definitely feel free to read this book for sure. And you can see that it leads to a field which is a relatively newer field. It's called the psychology of happiness. In other words, it's called positive psychology. Of course, all these are like picked from Amazon, so you can see all the click to look inside. I mean, of course, if you click on it, it's not going to work on this presentation. You can see that there are two books, and the one on the right is the cheaper version. I think it kind of summarizes everything in a very simple way for an idiot like me. I would urge you to read one of these. There are a lot of very useful insights. Okay, now let me pose you a question. Does anybody know what is this? Just, you guys are really smart, man. Like really smart. There's a small change to this. I mean, it's been corrected of late. It seems like internet and mobile are more important than food, water, and shelter these days. But anyways, you're right. I mean, this is the very famous Maslow's pyramid. And for many of us, it seems like all the bottom layers are easy to get. So let's focus more on the top pinnacle. So let's see what is this concept of self-actualization that can lead to a sustainable source of happiness. And that's exactly what all the positive psychologists are trying to uncover. So this is like, let's say, a zoomed in view of just the apex. And there's some level of hierarchy within that. You can see that from positive psychology, there's some sort of like a summary of the whole thing. Working for a noble cause, a cause which is greater than yourself, and this is exactly what Bertrand Russell also argues, and he deduces that very logically speaking. Working for a noble cause which is beyond yourself is probably the most successful way to achieve everlasting happiness. And this is something very selfishly speaking. I mean, you want happiness for yourself, then you should be working for a noble cause. So I think the implications are very, very powerful. So here we are not trying to save the world for saving the world's sake. You're just trying to be happy for yourself. And it turns out the best way to do it is to actually work for others. Just think about that. We can cover some of the other aspects later, but this is going back to one of the questions that I had asked in your survey, which is, what is your most important value in life? Something that really appeals to you from the core. So of the 73 who responded, this is represented in a tag cloud. You know what is a tag cloud, which is the size of that particular text represents the frequency with which it's been mentioned. So if a lot of you said curiosity or love, then it, of course, appears in big letters. And the ones who said other words, it's probably like 1 or 2 people, so that's why it's smaller. So you can see for the crowd here, maybe it's a representative sample. The values of integrity, curiosity, love, equality, freedom, like fundamental humanistic values, are very important. So it just makes total sense to actually work on these values. Whatever career you are going to be doing, if you work on these, you'll be like fundamentally really happy, and you'll also be contributing to a global good, because these are all the noble causes. Definitely they qualify under those. Just one quick caveat on just going after short-term worldly pleasures. You know how the system works. It works through activating what is called the pleasure center of the brain, which is a bunch of neurotransmitters like serotonin or dopamine working on the pleasure center, which can be located on the brain, physically speaking. And in fact, Bertrand Russell argues that the nature of the beast is that it's one, short term, and number two, it gets used to it like really fast. So the more you do it, it dulls it, so you need stronger and stronger stimuli to keep it going. And he extends that argument to ad infinitum to basically say that you will eventually start using drugs, because that's the only way to keep it going. And if you start using drugs, then you kill yourself. So I mean, I leave it to you, but I think it's definitely not a sustainable path and something not recommended by most of us. This is something that I just wanted to put it out there. Of course, you know that there's a lot of theory on psychology and personalities. This is from personality theory. There are 2 popular theories. One is based on the Myers-Briggs test. The other is based on the Enneagram test. I have tried to read a lot into these and try to uncover it for myself. I'm not a big fan, to be honest, because it buckets people into like types. It tells you what type you are. I don't think it's so easy to bucket oneself, but still the questions that are being asked are very effective to find out more about yourself. So it's worthwhile going through the process, but don't take the outcome like too seriously. It can give you like new insights about yourself. So that's why it's effective. And based on the insights you get, I mean, there are like books written to tell you what you should be doing, which is kind of like suited to your personality. Remember that personality is not static, it changes. And remember that it's just a snapshot that you're taking at this point. So you can always like work around something else that you come up with. All right, so this is here to hopefully not scare you too much. It's like a silhouette of eyes which represent fear. Sometimes there's a lot that you can actually learn from your worst fears. I'm not talking like snakes and spiders here, but everybody has their own fundamental fears. Like, are you afraid of rejection? Are you afraid of failure? What is it that you're really afraid of? Are you afraid of bringing down the people who value you the most? I think these are probably the most uncomfortable questions to ask oneself. Even if you're asking yourself, you just want to move away like really fast. But some of the insights that are really powerful can come from this analysis. And I would urge you to do that for yourself. Mainly because so far we've spent a lot of time uncovering the carrots, as in carrots are whatever makes you happy. But I think this is the stick, and the stick can be very powerful itself. So just find out what is it that you're trying to run away from, and I think that could give you a lot of useful insights to basically define your why in more detail. So once you've covered the why, then we come to the next question, which is how. And if you had actually done a good job at the why, then I think the how is a much easier question than the why. You'll find that there are many ways of saying it. So where there's a will, there's a way. So the how can easily be uncovered once you know a strong why. I want to do a quick exercise in this group right here. I want you to raise your hand if somebody, like not necessarily me, like let's take me, comes to you with a 2-minute favor. I'm going to ask you a favor which is less than 2 minutes, does not involve money, and it's something like I'm just going to ask you for your advice or your opinion on something. It's going to be a quick thing, no money involved. It's not going to kill you in the process. It's not going to land you in any trouble. How many of you would be willing to help me if I come to you genuinely to ask that? Can you please raise your hands? Thank you. Anybody who would not be willing to help, like, can you please raise your hands? I won't like pick on you. I just want to know. It's just it seems like nobody's raising your hands. And as a last question, I want to ask: how many of you actually go around asking these kind of favors every day? Like quick 2-minute, less than 2 minutes, no money involved, just kind of like favors from other people. That's good. Like every day. Okay, that's good. I think that's pretty cool. I think it's at least like 30-40%. So I'm saying this because usually there's an oversupply of people willing to help and undersupply of people asking for help, which is a sad situation. because honestly, think about the implications. I mean, usually the conventional assumption is that it's easy to ask for help and it's difficult to help, but I think it's wrong. It's probably much more difficult to ask for help because you're putting yourself in a vulnerable situation, and it's easy to actually help because it's a position of power. So I would urge you, like, whatever you're trying to do and you're trying to figure out how to do it, I would urge you to actually ask for help. It's difficult. I know it's difficult, but it's one of the things that once you do it, you'll find that everyone is really happy to help you out. Don't go around asking for like $1 million. You'll never get it so easily, but just make sure that you really think through your help properly. Don't go and ask for like open-ended help. But once you know exactly what you want, then you'll find that surprisingly a lot of people are actually very much willing to help you in the process. This is what the author argues in this book, Give and Take. He says it's easy to give than to take, so he urges you to actually give first and also eventually take. It's a very good book. You should definitely read through this. And this is a famous quote from Paulo Coelho. It says, when you really, really, really want something, you'll find that it's not just the other person, it's not just your family, it's not just your friends, it's not just like animals, it's not just the world, it's not just inanimate and animate objects, it's not just anything, it's everything. The entire universe conspires to realize your desire. So when you have the entire universe by you, I think there's nothing else that's excluded. So I think you are in good hands. So just make sure that you really, really decide something. And you will do so once you really have a strong why. Avoid the us versus them mentality. I think it's very easy, and I used to have a lot of that when I was in college. It's very easy to fall into that. It's some sort of a humanistic tendency. So just be cognizant of it and never put somebody else as the outsiders. It's more difficult to do that, but once you get that process going, you'll find that it's the correct way to do things from a moral perspective also. Once again, one more really good book. As you can guess by now, I'm really into reading books. Really, really good book. Like, trust me, very good book. If you have the time, I would definitely recommend you read this. It's a lot of really good insights about the human animal, and which essentially means you. Every page of this I was just taking down notes. This one is very obvious. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. The reason I put this up here is to urge you to especially make use of the alumni community. You'll find that people who are like 5 or 6 or 10 years down the line in whatever you're trying to do, they've actually been in your shoes, have done what you're trying to do. So don't just stick around with your batch. Definitely ask people who have already done what you're trying to do. And in this case, I think I'll strongly appeal to you to reach out to alumni and ask for help. Like, we already saw that asking for help is important, so please do that. And at this stage, I really want to recognize the really good work done by Professor B. Nagarajan and his team, the whole IAR team, including Suresh and Saravanan and Tara and a whole bunch of people. I attended some of the meetings. I think it's really brilliant. They are really trying to bring together the alumni community for the benefit of the alumni themselves, for the benefit of the student community, for the benefit of the IIT ecosystem, and I think hopefully for the whole society. So can you quickly give a round of applause for the team? Thank you. I think it's brilliant work. I would always urge you to be cognizant of what alumni can do for you and open doors for you, and what you can also do as an alumni down the line. Question I asked, what is your most powerful strength? So don't be shy to use your strength. It's pretty obvious, but sometimes not that obvious. People are actually ashamed that they work really hard. I really support the guy who wrote Magunas as his strength. I think it's pretty cool. Don't be ashamed. That's your strength. Just go for it. You can see perseverance really trumps everything. Hard work. So don't be ashamed. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, you can be a god, but just remember how is it that you actually made it to this place? I mean, the question says, rather it asks in retrospect, what have you used in the past? So, I mean, if something worked for you, then feel free to explore it in more detail and keep using it as much as you can. Leverage upon it. And just a little bit of extra detail on the intelligence aspect. I'm sure all of you are more than intelligent. Does anyone know who is this guy? This is a tougher question. Does anyone know who is this guy? Okay, I think that's the point. So the guy his name is Chris Langan. His claim to fame, or infamous in this case, is that he's the most intelligent man ever measured. So just to put things in perspective, and remember it's a normal scale, the IQ scale. A normal average human has an IQ of about 100. A very, very intelligent person like Einstein has an IQ of 150, which is a huge leap. It's like a quantum leap because it's like a normal scale. It becomes more difficult as you go along the scale. This guy has an IQ of 195, highest ever measured for humans. This guy is a freaking genius. At 6 months of age, he could fluently speak. He did like a lot of wonderful feats. By 3 or 4, he was like really good at like almost everything. And you take any field, entire semester worth of portion, you could just like read through in less than a day and completely score the perfect score for like whatever exams you keep. This guy was like freaking god. Like if he were to be in IIT, I'm sure he would be like classified a god, quote unquote. So, such impressive credentials. Do you know what eventually happened to him? Of course, you don't know him, so I'll tell you. He turned out to be a farm hand. So he was working at a farm. Don't get me wrong, I don't mean to belittle that position. I think it's very noble, very wonderful. But all I'm trying to show here is that extraordinary intelligence was probably not needed to be a farmhand. I think it's much more easier to be a farmhand without so much of intellect. And I think it's not just an extreme case. There have been studies, like there was this famous study done to track people who have extraordinary IQ from like a very young age, the day it was measured, to their entire life. So it's like, I think, a 40-year study or like a 50-year study, tracking them almost like every year of their life. And it turns out a statistically significant outcome of that study was to show that you need a minimum level of intelligence. And if you have like above average intelligence, it's very useful. But anything beyond like, let's say 130 of IQ score, it's not going to change anything. In fact, very high IQs can actually be counterproductive. So just watch out for that. I think it's probably safe to extend that argument one level further to say if you have just one strength, too much of just like one strength could be eventually a problem, not really a big advantage. So don't be that one-trick pony. And these are all pictures of some of the heroes that you mentioned. So one of my survey questions was, who do you think you consider as a hero? So put yourself in your hero's shoes once you face a big problem. I don't know, be it Naruto or like Dhoni, for example. Once you're like really stressed out, think what would Captain Cool do in that situation. I think it'll give you good answers to solve the how question. And this is one of my favorite methods. I call it the constraints blaster, which is basically like I picked these 5 or 6 examples to take out 1 or 2 constraints at a time. Once you face a problem, you think about it, how would a really intelligent man solve it? So which is basically taking out your constraints of intelligence. Think about how a very successful political leader would solve it. How would a really rich man solve it? If you have infinite time, how would you solve it? And if you are a big socialite, like the fictional character Gatsby, how would you solve it? And if you're like, you have bloodlust like Alexander, of course this is not Alexander, it's from the movie Alexander, but if you have bloodlust and if you're really into like physical power, how would you solve it? And the reason you do that exercise is not to actually use one of those methods, but you'll soon see that some constraints that you thought existed may not actually exist. So you might actually find that you can actually blast through some of your constraints. So use that as a powerful tool. I think it's very powerful. It's helped me in different situations. I think this is like repeated advice. Money comes under the how part in my presentation. It doesn't come under the why part. I think it's very, very, very rare to actually find somebody doing something for money as the ultimate objective in life. Usually, even if you're actually working for money, it turns out that you want to eventually use that money for something else. And if you haven't thought about it properly, then you're probably not clear about your objectives. So money is just simple. It's just supply and demand. If there's a strong demand for your skill sets and you are the only one supplying it, then you'll make a lot of money. It's just very simply put as that. So if you're working for something which is really in demand by society and you're the only one doing it, you'll be like really rich. And it goes back to saying that even if you serve society, you can actually make money. There's nothing wrong with it. And if you're actually working in a field, especially let's take music for example, you might find that there is an oversupply of people because it's intrinsically a rewarding thing to do. Then the urge or the call is to actually be excellent. And once you're like really excellent at something, then you can actually make more money. But if there's an oversupply also, it just makes it more difficult and complicated, but I think there's still scope to make money if you really get excellent. So that's the call for being excellent. It's also a constitutional duty. That's what LSD says. I'm sure you have seen that video. So it's your duty. It's written in the Constitution. The police is going to come after you. Okay, so this slide is, of course, over-dramatization. The question I want to ask you here is, what is the arch enemy? What is the absolute enemy of great or excellence? So what is the biggest killing factor to being excellent? Just like one quick answer, somebody?
Laziness.
Sorry?
Laziness.
Laziness? Fear? Just
Yourself.
myself? Hopefully not me. If I can help, let me know so that I can help you be excellent. All right, so I think it's best captured by the following statement. Good is the enemy of great.